The Resolute glided into orbit above Earth, the blue and green planet sprawling beneath them like a jewel in the darkness. The journey had been long and dangerous, but Dan and Var had grown stronger both as allies and as friends. Captain Reed came to meet them in the observation deck. You've handled yourself well. The reports of your efforts have already reached Earth Command. I think I can safely say you've earned more than recognition. Dan smirked. I didn't do it for recognition, but I'll take it. Vara, standing beside him, gave a small nod. I did not expect to find trust or friendship among humans. I see now that I was mistaken. Their first stop was the Earth-Cairn Diplomatic Summit. Vara would formally announce her safe return, and Dan was invited as her representative from the human side. Walking into the great hall of the summit, Var felt a strange mix of fear and pride. The hall was filled with Cairn nobles, some curious, some suspicious, others openly hostile. She could feel their eyes on her, whispering, judging. Dan walked beside her, silent and confident. The humans present gave him respectful nods. He had learned quickly that his presence alone could calm a tense situation. When Var stepped forward to address the assembly, she removed the clasp from her neck. Her true form shimmered to life once again. Silver hair, luminous markings, and eyes like the storm-lit seas of her world. The room went silent. Gasps filled the air, followed by whispers. Many had never seen the princess like this. Powerful and radiant. I am Princess Vara, she said clearly, her voice steady. I have returned not just to claim my place, but to unite Cairn with those who respect justice, courage, and truth. Dan stood beside her, watching as her presence commanded the room. He felt pride swell in his chest. She had survived, grown stronger, and now stood ready to lead. One of the nobles stepped forward, his expression skeptical. You left us, Princess. Why should we follow a ruler who abandons her own people? Var did not flinch. I left because my life was in danger, and because I needed allies I could trust. Humans do not judge by appearances or politics, they act for what is right. They have taught me that courage and loyalty are stronger than fear and manipulation. Dan placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. She speaks the truth, and I will stand by her. The assembly murmured, some still doubtful, but others nodding in agreement. Over the next days, Dan helped Vara navigate the complex politics of her world. Together, they uncovered rival factions attempting to seize power during her absence. Many were surprised that a human soldier would be involved in Cairn politics, but his actions and courage had earned their respect. Vara's people began to see her not as the plain, powerless princess they once dismissed, but as a strong leader, someone who could inspire, protect, and unite. One night, in the quiet of her royal chambers, Vara spoke with Dan. The windows opened to the twin moons of Cairn, casting silver light across the room. You have done more than I could have imagined. Vara said softly, not just in battle, but in helping me reclaim my place. Dan shrugged. I didn't do it alone. You were ready for this. I just made sure no one stopped you. Her gaze lingered on him. And yet, I owe you more than my throne. You saw me for who I truly am, even when no one else would. Dan smiled. I told you from the start. I chose you not because of appearances, but because you're real. That's the reward. Var laughed lightly. Then perhaps the ugly princess was the wisest choice. The final day of the summit arrived. Var formally reclaimed her throne. The ceremony was simple but powerful. Dan stood beside her. As she took the royal seat, the Cairn people cheering, the nobles bowing, and even some former critics now showing respect. As she raised her hand to address her people, she looked toward Dan. A great victory is not measured by the battles we win alone, but by the trust we build and the allies we choose. Today, we celebrate courage, unity, and the bonds that make us stronger than fear. The crowd erupted. In applause, Dan allowed himself a small smile, knowing that together, they had changed the course of her world. After the ceremonies, Dan and Var returned to the observation deck of the royal palace. The stars of the Cairn night stretched wide above them. You have a choice now, Var said quietly. You can stay on Cairn and continue as my advisor, or return to your people on Earth. Dan looked out at the stars, thinking of the humans who had trained him, the battles he had fought, and the home he loved. Then he turned to Vara. "I'll stay," he said simply. "Not for duty, but because I want to. You've become more than a mission or a reward. You're a friend, Dan, perhaps something more." Vara's eyes softened, a faint smile appearing on her lips. "Then I am glad. You have chosen wisely." In the weeks that followed, Earth and Karen formed a new alliance. Trade routes opened, cultural exchanges began, and both planets benefited from the courage and initiative of two people who had trusted each other. When the odds seemed impossible, Dan became a respected figure on Karen, teaching soldiers the value of honor, loyalty, and humanity. Var ruled with wisdom and strength. No longer the princess hidden away, but a leader who inspired courage in others. One quiet evening, on the palace balcony, Vara and Dan watched the twin moons rise over him. The horizon. "You changed everything," Vara said. Dan smiled. "No, we changed everything together." She nodded. "Perhaps the greatest reward is not power or title. It is trust, courage, and knowing that someone believes in you even when the world does not." Dan reached for her hand. "Then I guess we both found our reward." Vara squeezed his hand gently. "Yes, and it was worth every risk." Above them, the stars stretched endlessly, a reminder of the journeys they had taken, the battles they had fought, and the adventures yet to come. The human soldier and the alien princess had proven that courage, trust, and humanity could triumph, even across worlds, and in that, the galaxy had seen the greatest truth of all, sometimes the simplest choice. Trusting someone for who they are can change the fate of entire worlds. Ruan had been traveling alone for 12 days in the cold stretch of space. Between the mining colonies and the inner worlds, his cargo ship, the Starling, was small and plain, built for moving crates of ore and supplies, not for speed or beauty. The only sound inside was the soft hum of the engines and the occasional creak of metal. When the ship adjusted course, Ruan didn't mind the silence. He had always been a man who liked quiet. That night, if it could be called night in the endless dark, something strange happened. The ship's radar began to pick up a signal. At first, Ruan thought it was an old satellite or maybe a drifting beacon left from some abandoned mission. But when he adjusted the scanners, the signal was unlike anything he had ever seen. It pulsed, slowly, almost like a heartbeat, and the tone was gentle but somehow full of weight, as if it carried a message beyond words. The coordinates were far from his planned route. Going there would delay his delivery, and delays meant losing payment. But something about that steady pulse made him uneasy in a curious way. He had heard stories of strange things in space, derelict ships, ancient stations, ghost signals, but never believed them. Now, he wasn't so sure. Just a quick look, he told himself, changing course. The Starling's engines gave a small growl as they turned toward the signal. Hours later, the source came into view. At first, it looked like a star reflecting off crystal, but as the ship drew closer, Ruan saw it was something far larger. It was a palace, if a palace could float in the middle of space. Its walls were shaped from something like glass, but not glass. The surface shimmered with colors that moved like slow waves. Towers stretched upward. Even though there was no ground, each one topped with a crown of delicate silver spires, round. It orbited pieces of broken stone and crystal. As if the palace had been cut free from a world and set adrift, the signal grew stronger. Ruan's navigation systems went quiet, almost as if they too were listening. A voice not through the speakers, but directly in his mind spoke. "Welcome, traveler. Approach without fear." Ruan's hands froze on the controls. He looked around, as if expecting someone to be in the cabin with him, but he was still alone. The voice was calm, warm, and carried a tone of authority against every logical thought. In his head, Ruan moved closer. A great gate opened in the side of the palace, and a soft blue light spilled out. His ship slid through like a leaf carried by a gentle stream. Inside was an enormous hall with no gravity, yet Ruan's feet found the floor as if it had been waiting for him. The hall was silent except for a faint hum, like music just out of hearing range. At the far end stood a figure. She was tall, her posture straight, her skin a soft silver blue, and her hair flowed like strands of black water. A crown of living crystal rested on her brow, and her long eyes reflected light like polished stone. "You have answered the call," she said, her voice like wind passing through a hollow shell. "Few do." Ruan swallowed, unsure how to speak. "In such a place, who are you?" "I am Queen Alara," she replied, stepping forward with a grace that seemed to bend the air itself. "Ruler of the Shard Realms, keeper of the Lost Gates, you stand in my domain, far from your own." Her gaze studied him, and Ruan felt as if she could see everything about him, his life, his choices, even the quiet regrets he kept hidden. "You were chosen," she continued. "Your heart was touched by the signal. Those who hear it are rare. It means you are fit to take part in the Rite of Three." "The Rite of Three?" Ruan asked. "Yes," she said, her voice steady but with a faint hint of curiosity. "Three wishes. Three gifts of power that can shape your life or your world. Anything within my reach, and my reach is vast, but each wish will change more than you expect. And once spoken, it cannot be undone." Ruan stared at her. 3 wishes? It sounded like something from the old tales his grandmother used to tell when he was a boy, stories of strange beings who could grant impossible things. But this wasn't a story. This was real, and the weight of it pressed on him. "Why me?" he finally asked. Alara tilted her head slightly. "Because you came. Many hear the call but turn away. You did not. That speaks of a heart willing to step beyond the known, even at cost." For a moment, silence filled the hall again. Ruan could feel the hum of the palace through the soles of his boots. He thought about what such wishes could mean: riches beyond measure, command of fleets, immortality. He thought of the long years of quiet work, the small ship that was more home than house, the debts, the loneliness. And then, unexpectedly, his mind drifted to something else entirely. The stories of Earth's oceans. His grandmother's voice came back to him, telling of great waves, endless horizons, the smell of salt and wind. He had never seen an ocean. No one in his generation had. The seas had long ago dried or been poisoned, their memories surviving only in old recordings and faded books. A strange ache filled his chest. Alara watched him with unreadable eyes. "You may speak your first wish now, if you are ready." Ruan took a slow breath. "My first wish," he hesitated, then said, "I wish to see the lost oceans of Earth." The queen's eyes widened slightly, as if this was not the answer she expected. "The oceans," she repeated. "Yes," Ruan said firmly. "I want to see them not through pictures, not through broken recordings. I want to stand before them as they were. I want to know what my people lost." For the first time, a small smile touched her lips. "Very well," she said. She raised her hand, and the hall around them began to dissolve into light. The blue glow deepened, became the color of deep water. The air filled with the sharp, clean scent of salt. Wind moved across his face, warm and alive. Then came the sound, a low, endless roar, like the breath of some ancient creature. Before Ruan stretched a vast, glittering sea. Waves rolled in from a horizon so far it seemed to touch the sky, breaking into white foam at his feet. Above, seabirds wheeled and cried. The sunlight danced on the water like living silver. Ruan stood there, not moving, as the sea breathed in and out before him. He felt small, but in a way that filled him with wonder instead of fear. The queen stood beside him, silent, watching his face. "This," she said softly, "is your first wish." Ruan had been traveling alone for 12 days in the cold stretch of space between the mining colonies and the inner worlds. His cargo ship, the Starling, was small and plain, built for moving crates of ore and supplies, not for speed or beauty. The only sound inside was the soft hum of the engines and the occasional creak of metal. When the ship adjusted course, Ruan didn't mind the silence. He had always been a man who liked quiet. That night, if it could be called night in the endless dark, something strange happened. The ship's radar began to pick up a signal. At first, Ruan thought it was an old satellite or maybe a drifting beacon left from some abandoned mission. But when he adjusted the scanners, the signal was unlike anything he had ever seen. It pulsed. Slowly, almost like a heartbeat, and the tone was gentle but somehow full of weight, as if it carried a message beyond words. The coordinates were far from his planned route. Going there would delay his delivery, and delays meant losing payment. But something about that steady pulse made him uneasy in a curious way. He had heard stories of strange things in space, derelict ships, ancient stations, ghost signals, but never believed them. Now, he wasn't so sure. Just a quick look, he told himself, changing course. The Starling's engines gave a small growl as they turned toward the signal. Hours later, the source came into view. At first, it looked like a star reflecting off crystal, but as the ship drew closer, Ruan saw it was something far larger. It was a palace, if a palace could float in the middle of space. Its walls were shaped from something like glass, but not glass. The surface shimmered with colors that moved like slow waves. Towers stretched upward. Even though there was no ground, each one topped with a crown of delicate silver spires, round. It orbited pieces of broken stone and crystal. As if the palace had been cut free from a world and set adrift, the signal grew stronger. Ruan's navigation systems went quiet, almost as if they too were listening. A voice not through the speakers, but directly in his mind spoke. "Welcome, traveler. Approach without fear." Ruan's hands froze on the controls. He looked around, as if expecting someone to be in the cabin with him, but he was still alone. The voice was calm, warm, and carried a tone of authority against every logical thought. In his head, Ruan moved closer. A great gate opened in the side of the palace, and a soft blue light spilled out. His ship slid through like a leaf carried by a gentle stream. Inside was an enormous hall with no gravity, yet Ruan's feet found the floor as if it had been waiting for him. The hall was silent except for a faint hum, like music just out of hearing range. At the far end stood a figure. She was tall, her posture straight, her skin a soft silver blue, and her hair flowed like strands of black water. A crown of living crystal rested on her brow, and her long eyes reflected light like polished stone. "You have answered the call," she said, her voice like wind passing through a hollow shell. "Few do." Ruan swallowed, unsure how to speak. "In such a place, who are you?" "I am Queen Alara," she replied, stepping forward with a grace that seemed to bend the air itself. "Ruler of the Shard Realms, keeper of the Lost Gates, you stand in my domain, far from your own." Her gaze studied him, and Ruan felt as if she could see everything about him, his life, his choices, even the quiet regrets he kept hidden. "You were chosen," she continued. "Your heart was touched by the signal. Those who hear it are rare. It means you are fit to take part in the Rite of Three." "The Rite of Three?" Ruan asked. "Yes," she said, her voice steady but with a faint hint of curiosity. "Three wishes. 3 gifts of power that can shape your life or your world. Anything within my reach, and my reach is vast, but each wish will change more than you expect. And once spoken, it cannot be undone." Ruan stared at her. 3 wishes? It sounded like something from the old tales his grandmother used to tell when he was a boy, stories of strange beings who could grant impossible things. But this wasn't a story. This was real, and the weight of it pressed on him. "Why me?" he finally asked. Alara tilted her head slightly. "Because you came. Many hear the call but turn away. You did not. That speaks of a heart willing to step beyond the known, even at cost." For a moment, silence filled the hall again. Ruan could feel the hum of the palace through the soles of his boots. He thought about what such wishes could mean: riches beyond measure, command of fleets, immortality. He thought of the long years of quiet work, the small ship that was more home than house, the debts, the loneliness. And then, unexpectedly, his mind drifted to something else entirely. The stories of Earth's oceans. His grandmother's voice came back to him, telling of great waves, endless horizons, the smell of salt and wind. He had never seen an ocean. No one in his generation had. The seas had long ago dried or been poisoned, their memories surviving only in old recordings and faded books. A strange ache filled his chest. Alara watched him with unreadable eyes. You may speak your first wish now, if you are ready. Ruan took a slow breath. My first wish, he hesitated, then said, I wish to see the lost oceans of Earth. The queen's eyes widened slightly, as if this was not the answer she expected. The oceans, she repeated. Yes, Ruan said firmly. I want to see them not through pictures, not through broken recordings. I want to stand before them as they were. I want to know what my people lost. For the first time, a small smile touched her lips. Very well, she said. She raised her hand, and the hall around them began to dissolve into light. The blue glow deepened, became the color of deep water. The air filled with the sharp, clean scent of salt. Wind moved across his face, warm and alive. Then came the sound of low, endless roar, like the breath of some ancient creature. Before Ruan stretched a vast, glittering sea. Waves rolled in from a horizon so far it seemed to touch the sky, breaking into white foam at his feet. Above, seabirds wheeled and cried. The sunlight danced on the water like living silver. Ruan stood there, not moving, as the sea breathed in and out before him. He felt small, but in a way that filled him with wonder instead of fear. The queen stood beside him, silent, watching his face. This, she said softly, is your first wish. The sea stretched endlessly before Ruan. The waves rose and fell with a rhythm older than memory. The air was fresh and alive, carrying the scent of salt, the cries of distant birds, and the whisper of wind over water. For a long time, Ruan said nothing. He only stood there, letting the sight sink into him, his boots pressed into soft sand. Tiny shells, polished smooth, lay scattered at his feet. The sunlight shimmered across the water like molten glass, and each breath he took felt deeper than the one before. He had traveled across dozens of star systems, seen strange worlds, frozen moons, and burning gas giants, but none of them compared to this. The queen stood beside him, her silver blue skin glowing faintly in the sunlight. She watched him carefully, her long eyes calm but curious. You surprise me, traveler, she said at last. Many who come here ask for power or riches. Some want their enemies destroyed. Some want to live forever. You ask only to see something lost. Ruan kept his eyes on the horizon. I've never seen the sea before. My grandmother used to tell me about it, how it moved, how it sounded, how it smelled. She said it was where life began on our world. Now, it's gone. People barely remember it. Your people, they destroyed it. The queen asked Ryue and gave a slow nod. Not all at once. Over time, wars, greed, carelessness. The water grew sick, the storms grew violent, and one by one, the oceans died. What's left is nothing. Like this, the queen was silent for a while. The waves rolled in, brushing over Ruan's boots before pulling away again. So this wish was for memory, she said finally. Not for you alone, but for the memory of your kind. Ruan turned to her. Yes, I wanted to see it for myself, but I also want to remember it well, Enno. To tell others, not in words, that feel empty, but in a way that makes them understand what they've lost. Something softened in her expression. You are different from most who stand before me. Ruan gave a small, half smile. Maybe I'm just stubborn. The queen's gaze turned toward the ocean. I have given you this vision exactly as it once was alive, pure, unbroken. But know this, it is only a vision. It will not last forever. I understand, Ruan said. The queen stepped forward, letting the water touch her feet. She reached into the air, and her hand seemed to pass through it like a curtain. When she drew her hand back, she held a small glass vial. Inside was a single drop of ocean water, shining with a light that seemed to move. This, she said, is the heart of what you see. It is not mere water, it carries the memory of the sea, its sounds, its movement, its life. When you look into it, you will remember this place exactly as it is now. Ruan accepted it carefully. The vial felt warm, as if it held a piece of the sun. They walked along the shore for a while. The sand shifted underfoot. The waves reached toward them and pulled back again. Ruan kept looking at the water, memorizing every detail, the way the foam curled at the edges, the deep green under the surface, the far-off glimmer of fish moving in schools. After some time, the queen spoke again. This was your first wish, to remain. But I warn you, each wish changes more than you see. Power has ripples, as the sea does, and once cast, the wave cannot be called back. Ruan thought about her words, but he didn't answer right away. Instead, he crouched down and let his hand touch the water. It was cool, but alive with energy. The sensation sent a shiver up his arm. "What would you wish for next?" she asked. Ruan looked up at her. "I'm not ready to answer that yet." Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "That is wise. Many rush, few wait." The ocean breeze shifted, carrying the scent of rain. The sky darkened slightly, and far on the horizon, clouds began to form. A single bolt of lightning flickered, followed by the deep rumble of thunder. Ruan straightened and watched the storm grow, even here. "The sea has moods, yes," the queen said. "It is a living thing, gentle one moment, fierce the next. It holds beauty and danger in the same breath." The storm moved closer. Waves grew higher, crashing against the shore with more strength. The queen lifted her hand, and instantly the wind softened, the clouds faded, and the water returned to calm. "You control it?" Ruan asked. "I control the vision," she replied. The real sea obeyed no one. Ruan's gaze lingered on the waves. He realized something then, that seeing the ocean like this made him want more than just memory. It made him want to give it back to the people who had lost it. The queen noticed the change in his eyes. "You are thinking of your second wish," she said. "Maybe," Ruan admitted, "but I'll decide when the time is right." "Very well," she said. "When you are ready, speak, and I will listen." They stood together for a while longer, the sound of the sea filling the space between them. Then the queen raised her hand again. The horizon began to fade. The birds vanished, the wind grew still, and the sunlight dimmed. The sand beneath Ruan's feet softened into light, and the roar of the ocean melted into silence. In a moment, they were back in the great crystal hall of the palace. The blue light from the walls shimmered faintly, and the hum of the palace returned. In his hand, Ruan still held the glass vial, the drop of ocean water glowing softly inside. The queen stepped closer, her eyes meeting his. "The first wish is complete. Guard it well. What you carry is not just water, it is a seed of memory. One day, it may grow into more than you expect." Ruan nodded, slipping the vial into a secure pocket of his jacket. "I'll keep it safe." She gave a slow nod. "Good. When you are ready for the second wish, I will be here. But remember, choose carefully. A wish for yourself is simple. A wish for others is harder, and its cost may not be yours alone to bear." Ruan thought about her words as he looked around the hall. The silence of space pressed faintly against the palace walls, and he knew his journey was no longer just about delivering cargo. He had stepped into something larger, something that could change more than just his life. The queen turned away, walking toward the far end of the hall. Her voice echoed gently behind her. "Rest now, traveler. The sea you have seen will wait in your heart until you call it again." Ruan stood there a moment longer, feeling the weight of the small vial in his pocket, and then followed her, wondering what his next choice would mean, not just for him, but for the world he came from. Ruan could not sleep that night. The guest chamber the queen had given him was quiet and comfortable, with walls made of pale crystal that glowed softly, as if holding the light of distant stars. But his mind kept returning to the ocean he had seen. Every detail felt alive: the salt on the wind, the sound of waves breaking on the shore, the endless horizon where sky met water. He took the glass vial from his pocket and held it up. Inside, the single drop of ocean water glimmered faintly. It was as if it carried the heartbeat of the sea itself. Ruan wondered if it truly held memory, or if it was simply a beautiful trinket. Either way, he could not stop looking at it. His grandmother's voice came back to him again. She had always spoken of the oceans like they were a living friend, vast, powerful, and full of secrets. When he was a boy, she would show him old books with pictures of blue water and ships sailing over it. One day, she used to say, "I hope you see it for yourself." He had thought it was only a dream. Now, it was real. The thought brought a strange feeling to his chest, part joy, part sadness. He had seen the ocean, yes, but only in a vision. The real seas of Earth were long gone, and no wish could bring them back exactly as they once were, or could it? The palace was quiet when Ruan left his room. The hallways curved gently, their crystal walls showing faint shadows of the stars outside. He walked until he found himself in a balcony-like chamber that opened directly to the void. No glass, no barrier, only a soft, invisible field that kept the air inside. He stepped forward, feeling the strange weightlessness of standing so close to the edge of nothing. From here, he could see the blue moon around which the palace drifted. Its surface glowed faintly with swirling clouds, and far beyond it lay a sea of stars. It was beautiful in a way that reminded him of the ocean, endless, mysterious, full of hidden places. "You're awake early," came a voice behind him. Ruan turned to see Queen Alara walking toward him. She moved as though she were part of the air itself, each step quiet and certain. "I couldn't sleep," Ruan admitted. "The ocean, it's still in my head." "That is the nature of memory," she said. "It lingers, shaping your thoughts." She stepped beside him, her gaze on the stars. "Your people have forgotten much of what made them strong. Perhaps that is why the ocean speaks to you so deeply. It is something your kind once held dear." Ruan nodded. "We lost it because we didn't care enough to protect it. That's the truth. I've been thinking, maybe my second wish should change that." The queen tilted her head slightly. "Change the hearts of your people, yes," Ruan said. "If they could see what I saw, if they could feel it, maybe they would fight to protect what's left of our world." The queen's eyes softened, but her tone stayed measured. "A noble thought, but you must understand, changing one heart is simple. Changing millions is dangerous. They will not all welcome such a gift. Some will resist it. Some will twist it to their own ends." "I know," Ruan said, "but maybe it's worth the risk." She studied him for a long moment before speaking. "Again, do not decide too quickly. A wish is like a stone dropped into a still pond. The ripples go farther than you think." They stood in silence for a while, watching the slow drift of the moon. Then the queen turned away. "Come, there is something I want to show you." Ruan followed her through winding halls until they reached a chamber unlike the others. Its walls were covered in shifting images, worlds he did not know, creatures unlike anything he had seen, seas of color that could not exist in nature. "This is my hall of remembering," the queen said. "Every world I have touched, every being I have met, every place that has been lost its memory is here." Ruan walked closer to one of the walls. An image formed, a green world with massive trees stretching toward a golden sky. Rivers ran like silver threads through the forests, and great winged shapes moved among the branches. "This world," the queen said softly, "was called Erythra. Its people cherished the air as you once cherished the sea. But when they forgot the value of it, the skies grew thick with poison. Now, there is nothing left." She moved to another wall, where an image of a shining city floated in the clouds. "And this," she continued, "was Velira. They built their homes in the skies, using the winds to travel between them. But in their pride, they cut away the very currents that carried life. The winds died, and their cities fell." Ruan looked at her. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because," she said, "you must understand, memories are precious, but they are not enough. Many remember what they have lost, yet still repeat the same mistakes. If you wish to change your people, you must decide if you are ready to bear the weight of that choice." Ruan felt the truth of her words settle heavily on him. The ocean had filled him with wonder, but it had also stirred something deeper, a desire to protect, to restore. But he knew she was right. Not everyone would want to be changed. As they walked back toward the main hall, Ruan glanced at the vial in his pocket. It was small, almost weightless, yet it carried the sea inside it. He wondered if that was how hope worked, tiny, but able to grow into something vast. Before parting, the queen spoke one last time. "Think on this, traveler. A wish can build or destroy. Memory can guide or trap. The sea teaches both lessons." Back in his chamber, Ruan sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the stars outside. The queen's words echoed in his mind. He was beginning to see that his journey was not just about wishes. It was about what he was willing to risk for them. He lay down, but before sleep took him, he held the vial to his chest and whispered to the memory of the sea, "I won't let you be forgotten." Ruan woke with a decision in his heart. He had spent the night thinking of the ocean, the Queen's words, and the long, empty years ahead if nothing changed. The first wish had shown him beauty. The second would have to do more. It would have to give that beauty to others. When he stepped into the great crystal hall, Queen Alara was already waiting for him. She stood near one of the tall windows, the silver crown on her brow catching the light. Outside, the blue moon turned slowly, its clouds swirling in silence. "You have chosen," she said without turning. Ruan stopped a few steps away from her. "Yes, I'm ready to speak my second wish." She faced him, her expression unreadable. "Then speak, traveler. But remember what I told you, every wish carries ripples." Ruan took a deep breath. "I wish for my people to remember what we lost. I want them to see the oceans as they were, to feel them the way I did. I want them to care for what remains of our world before it's gone." The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in deep thought. "You wish to touch the hearts of all your kind. You understand this will not be simple. It will stir joy in some, and resistance in others. You may not be thanked for it." "I understand," Ruan said firmly. "But if they can feel what I felt, it might be enough to make them act." The Queen stepped closer. "Very well. I will honor your wish." She lifted both hands, and the hall began to change. The walls darkened, the air thickened with a strange energy. A low hum filled the space, rising and falling like waves. The crystal floor under Ruan's boots grew warm, and the drop of ocean water in his pocket began to glow brightly, as if answering the Queen's call. From her hands, threads of silver light spread out in all directions, vanishing through the walls into the depths of space. Ruan felt a pull in his chest, as though part of him was being sent out along those threads. "It is done," the Queen said after a long moment, lowering her arms. "Your wish has been carried to the minds of your people. Tonight, they will dream of the oceans vast, alive, and untamed. They will wake with the memory in their hearts." Ruan let out the breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "Will it change them?" The Queen's voice was calm. "Some, yes, others will ignore it. Some will be afraid of it. But all will remember, even if they tried to hide it." That night, far away on his homeworld, the ripple began. A miner deep beneath the planet's crust awoke in the middle of his shift, gasping as he remembered standing on a sunlit shore, waves rolling in to kiss his feet. A child in a crowded city dreamed of swimming through clear blue water, sunlight spilling down from above, schools of silverfish moving around her like flowing stars. An old woman, long resigned to the dust and wind of her dry homeland, opened her eyes in the dark and found tears on her cheeks. She had not thought of the ocean in 50 years. In the days that followed, talk of the dreams spread. Some people described them in detail, how they could smell the salt in the air, how the waves moved with a voice of their own. Others dismissed them as strange tricks of the mind. But the memory stayed, no matter how they tried to explain it away. In government halls, leaders began to debate. In markets and stations, travelers whispered about the visions. A few scientists tried to study the sudden wave of ocean dreams, but no instruments could trace their source. Some welcomed the change. Plans were drawn to restore rivers, to clean poison lakes, to build artificial seas where there had been none for centuries. But others saw it differently. "This is distraction," they argued. "We have no time for old myths. The world is fine as it is." The Queen had been right. There was resistance. Back in the palace, Ruan stood again on the balcony, staring at the stars. He wondered how far the wish had gone, how many hearts it had touched. He hoped the change would grow, but doubt crept. Into the Queen joined him, her steps as silent as the night. "Your wish is working," she said quietly. "Already, I feel the stirring of thoughts on your world. But the path will not be smooth." Ruan nodded. "I knew it wouldn't be. But at least now, there's a chance." She studied him for a moment. "Most who come here spend their wishes on themselves. You have spent two on your people." "Why?" Ruan looked out at the endless black beyond the balcony. Because I've seen what happens when people stop caring. Once it's gone, you can't bring it back, not the same way. But maybe, just maybe, if enough of them see what I saw, they'll fight to keep what's left. The queen's lips curved into a faint smile. You speak as one who has carried loss for a long time. Ruan didn't answer, but his silence told her she was right. The next morning, Ruan was restless. He walked the long corridors of the palace, passing statues carved from crystal, paintings made of shifting light, and rooms where the air shimmered with unseen music. Everywhere he went, he thought about the ripple his wish had sent. He pictured the miner, the child, the old woman. He pictured others, farmers, travelers, leaders, each holding a piece of the ocean in their minds. It was a fragile thing, but it was something. When he returned to the great hall, the queen was waiting again. You have one wish left, she said. The final choice. Ruan touched the vial in his pocket. I know, but I want to see what happens with the second wish first. You may wait, she agreed. But remember, time moves differently here. What is a day in my realm may be weeks on your world. Ruan thought about that. Waiting might mean returning to a world already changed or already in conflict over the memory he had given them. The queen stepped closer. When the time comes, your last wish will define your legacy. Choose with care, for it will echo longer than you imagine. Ruan met her gaze. I will. That night, he stood on the balcony. Again, the stars burned cold and bright above him, and somewhere out there, his homeworld turned under the same sky. He didn't know if his people would embrace the dream or reject it. He didn't know if the ocean in their minds would grow into action or fade into silence. But he did know this: he had given them a gift they could not forget. And for now, that was enough. The world did not change overnight, but the first ripples of Ruan's second wish began to appear quickly. People all across his homeworld awoke with memories of the oceans in their minds. Some felt joy, a longing for something beautiful and lost. Others felt confusion or anger, unable to explain why they suddenly remembered a place they had never truly seen. In the first cities, children begged their parents to take them to the sea, pointing to lakes and rivers that were dull and shallow. Farmers looked at the small streams running across their fields and imagined wide, rolling oceans stretching to the horizon. Even the governments could not ignore what was happening. Scientists and leaders debated, wrote papers, and held meetings about the sudden rise of ocean dreams. Ruan watched all this from afar, through the palace's crystal walls. He could feel the threads of his wish stretching across the planet, carrying memories and stirring hearts. It filled him with hope, but also a strange unease. The queen noticed his change in expression. You are worried, she said softly. I thought this would bring joy, Ruan admitted. And it does for some. But others, they resist. They don't want to remember. They don't want to care. Some even say it's a trick, or that I've sent a dream to control them. The queen nodded. This is the cost of changing many hearts. Memory can inspire, but it can also provoke fear. Not all who awaken will see it as a gift. Some will fight against it, seeing their old ways threatened. This is the natural balance. Ruan ran a hand through his hair, frustration building. I thought if they felt the beauty of the ocean, they would act. But some, they only feel anger or confusion. The heart is not simple, the queen replied. You cannot control how others receive a gift. You can only give it and hope it grows. Across the world, signs of the wish appeared in small ways first, in coastal towns. Fishermen began cleaning rivers and ponds, hoping to restore a part of the oceans that once fed their ancestors. Schools started programs to teach children about the water, the wildlife, and the land that depended on it. But not everyone acted with good intentions. Some traders and merchants grew anxious. Restoring rivers and seas would mean stricter rules, new costs, and more work. They complained loudly, calling the ocean memories a waste of time and energy. In the cities, protests erupted. People shouted in confusion, demanding answers. Some feared that the dreams were a trick, a lie, a form of control. Ruan felt every ripple in the palace, and each one weighed on him. He had wanted change, but he had not expected resistance. For the first time, he felt doubt creeping into his heart. One evening, the queen appeared beside him in the hall. She looked out at the void, at the drifting palace and the stars beyond. "You are troubled," she said. "Yes," Ruan admitted. "I gave them the memory. But I didn't think about how hard it would be. People are divided. Some act with hope, some with anger. I feel like I've done too much. Or maybe not enough." The queen studied him, her eyes deep and calm. Change is never easy. Even when hearts awaken to beauty, the world does not instantly follow. Some will reject what is right. Some will protect it fiercely. That is the cost of free will. Ruan took a deep breath. "I understand that now, but it still hurts to see them fight against it. It is the natural test." The queen said, "You wish for memory to awaken hearts. Now the hearts must choose. Your role is to hope, to guide when needed, and to wait. This is as much a lesson for you as it is for them." Ruan wandered the palace halls alone for hours, thinking. He had spent his life delivering cargo, living quietly, never expecting to influence the world. And now, he had given a gift of memory to millions of people. Some of them embraced it, others rejected it, but the seed was planted. He remembered the first time he had seen the ocean in the queen's vision. The sound of the waves, the smell of salt, the movement of the water, they had changed him. Even though he knew it was only a vision, perhaps now, he thought, the people of his world would have the same awakening, but in real life, that awakening was never simple. Weeks passed, rivers began to be cleaned. Trees were planted along the banks of lakes. Schools taught children about water cycles, marine life, and conservation. Some towns began small projects to restore wetlands. Yet in other places, people tore down new constructions, blocked cleanup efforts, and argued that the world had no time for such fantasies. Arguments broke out in councils, markets, and neighborhoods. Some leaders dismissed the ocean dreams entirely, calling them nonsense or mass hysteria. Ruan felt the tension through the threads of his wish. The ripples were spreading. Yes, but so was conflict. He visited the balcony again and held the glass vial in his hand. The single drop of ocean water reflected the starlight. He whispered to it quietly, "Grow in their hearts. Let them feel the beauty. Let them choose hope over fear." The queen appeared silently beside him. "You see the cost," she said. "I do," Ruan admitted. "I thought a wish for memory would be simple. But it's not. It touches more than the heart. It touches pride, greed, fear. Some will resist. Some will fight. And some will even try to erase the change. Such is life," the queen replied. "Even when given a gift, the world will test it. Your role is to stand and hope. This is what makes humans remarkable. They can fight against change, yet still grow stronger because of it." Ruan looked at her, a new understanding in his eyes. So this is why the first wish was not just for beauty. It was a lesson. And the second is a test. The queen smiled faintly. "Yes, you are learning. That is why you were chosen. To see, to act, to understand. But your journey is not complete. One more wish remains, and it will define how your legacy is remembered." Ruan thought about the first two wishes. The first had given him a vision of what was lost, a memory that stirred his soul. The second had reached into the minds of his people, giving them the chance to remember, but also bringing challenges he had not expected. Now, he knew the final wish would be even more important. It would need to be wise, thoughtful, and far-reaching. He had to consider not only what he wanted, but also what his world needed and what he himself was willing to risk. He placed the vial back in his pocket and stood at the balcony, watching the stars drift past the palace. The ripples of the second wish continued to spread through his homeworld, shaping lives, inspiring some, frustrating others. He felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever before. But for the first time, Ruan understood something deep about hope, even when change was resisted, even when people argued and fought. The memory of the oceans had been planted, and seeds, once planted, could grow in ways no one could fully predict.